The war room of the Galactic Coalition was built for victory. It was a massive circular chamber floating inside the command flagship Dominion Spear, the largest warship in the Coalition fleet. Transparent walls revealed the cold emptiness of space outside, where hundreds of warships orbited a distant desert world below. Inside the chamber, a glowing holographic battlefield floated above a central command table. Dozens of alien commanders stood around it. Reptilian generals, insectoid strategists, towering armored warlords, representatives from the most powerful armies in the galaxy. And yet, despite their numbers, the room was silent. The High Commander of the Coalition stepped forward and enlarged the holographic map. A barren desert planet rotated slowly in the air. Zoom. A rocky valley appeared. Zoom again. A small fortified compound built into the cliffs. The commander pointed at it. "That," he said coldly, "is the last human resistance point on this planet." Several officers nodded. The Coalition had invaded the system only 5 days earlier. Human planetary defenses had been crushed quickly under overwhelming numbers. Orbital fleets destroyed. Cities captured. Most human forces had retreated or been eliminated. Only this small outpost remained. 50 soldiers, the commander continued. The hologram displayed the number. Human personnel. 50. Against them, the Coalition had deployed nearly 30,000 troops across the planet. Victory should have already been complete. Yet somehow, the outpost still stood. The commander turned to the assembled generals. "Explain this delay." No one spoke at first. Finally, a reptilian general slowly lifted his claw. "High Commander, the situation is not as simple as it appears." The commander frowned. "You are facing 50 humans." "Yes," the general replied carefully, "but they are not ordinary humans." He tapped a control panel. New data appeared above the compound. The unit identification code flashed across the hologram. Unit designation: Human Special Forces. A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. Several commanders exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of the insectoid strategists lowered his antennae slightly. The High Commander noticed the reaction immediately. "You seem concerned," he said sharply. The reptilian general hesitated. Then he activated several archived combat reports. Images filled the air. Burning starships. Destroyed armored columns. Abandoned battlefields. "These are previous encounters with human special forces," the general explained quietly. "In every case, they were heavily outnumbered." The High Commander crossed his arms. "And—" The general zoomed into the casualty reports. Coalition battalions destroyed. Command centers eliminated. Entire invasion forces halted. "In every case," the general continued, "they still won." The room grew colder. Another general finally spoke. "We have fought humans before," he said. "Regular soldiers are manageable." He gestured toward the compound. "But those," he paused, "are different." The High Commander slammed his fist onto the command table. The hologram flickered from the impact. "I will not tolerate fear in this room," he snapped. "They are 50 soldiers on an isolated planet surrounded by our forces." He pointed directly at the compound. "They are trapped." Silence followed. The commanders stared at the hologram, at the tiny human base sitting quietly between the cliffs. Then the reptilian general spoke again. Softly, "High Commander, they are not trapped." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then what are they?" The general looked at the battlefield data one more time, then answered with quiet certainty. "They are waiting." The war room remained silent long after the reptilian general finished speaking. The hologram of the desert compound hovered above the command table, glowing faintly in the dim chamber. Outside the transparent walls of the flagship, hundreds of coalition warships drifted in orbit around the conquered planet. An entire armada against 50 humans. It should have been ridiculous. But no one in the room was laughing. The High Commander finally broke the silence. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that 50 human soldiers are preventing 30,000 coalition troops from finishing this invasion?" No one answered immediately. Finally, a tall insectoid strategist stepped forward. His thin limbs moved carefully as he accessed the command console. "High Commander, perhaps context will help." Several battle reports appeared in the air. Old recordings. Some of them were classified across half the galaxy. The first report showed a jungle world. Dense forests stretched across a mountain pass where thousands of coalition soldiers had once advanced. "The Battle of Karras Ridge," the strategist explained. 4,000 coalition infantry attempted to capture a supply route used by human forces. The hologram zoomed in. 10 small markers appeared on the mountainside. Human personnel present, 10. The High Commander frowned. 10 soldiers. Yes. The strategist continued. They held the pass for 9 hours. The battle recording played. Coalition forces pushed up the steep slopes. Gunfire erupted from the trees. Human snipers moved through the jungle like shadows. Every time coalition troops advanced, another explosion tore through their ranks. The mountainside itself began collapsing. Hidden charges buried deep inside the cliffs detonated in sequence. Entire sections of rock fell onto the advancing army. When the recording ended, the casualty report appeared. Coalition casualties, 3,870. Human casualties, 0. The High Commander's expression darkened. "Tricks," he said. The strategist nodded slightly. "Yes." Another report appeared. A massive fortress orbiting a gas giant. It had been considered one of the most secure military installations in coalition space. "Human infiltration team," the strategist said. The hologram zoomed in. 8 human operatives drifting toward the station in silent maneuver suits. The recording showed them attaching themselves to the hull. Then the screen cut to black. 30 seconds later, the station's command center exploded. Security teams flooded the corridors searching for the attackers. They never found them. The humans had already vanished into space. The strategist ended the recording. These operations happened across dozens of worlds. More reports appeared. Destroyed convoys. Sabotaged fleets. Entire invasion forces collapsing after human raids. Eventually, the coalition intelligence divisions began referring to them by a different name. The strategist displayed the file. Human Special Forces. Designation: Ghost Devils. "They appear without warning," he said. "They strike where you are weakest. And when you finally realize what has happened." He paused. "They are already gone." The High Commander watched the reports for a long moment. Then he waved them away. "Stories," he said dismissively. "Fear spreads quickly in war." He turned back to the hologram of the compound. 50 human soldiers still sat quietly in the desert valley. "No ghosts," he said. "No devils." He pointed directly at the base. "Just humans." Then he issued the order. Prepare the assault. But no one in the room moved. Finally, one of the generals spoke the words every commander had been thinking. His voice was calm, but absolute. We are not fighting them. The order went out across the coalition army. All ground forces advance on the human compound immediately. The command signal echoed through orbital fleets, armored divisions, and infantry battalions spread across the desert world. On the flagship Dominion Spear, the High Commander stood in the war room, watching the battlefield hologram carefully. Thousands of coalition troops were positioned around the valley where the human outpost stood. Armored vehicles, artillery units, air support squadrons, 30,000 soldiers in total. More than enough to erase 50 humans. The High Commander waited for the attack to begin. But something strange happened. Nothing moved. The battlefield hologram remained unchanged. No advancing units. No aircraft launching. No artillery firing. The High Commander frowned. Why are the ground divisions not moving? A communications officer looked down at his console. Sir, the units are receiving the order. Then why are they not executing it? The officer hesitated. Several commanders are requesting confirmation. The High Commander's eyes narrowed. Confirmation. Yes, sir. Another officer spoke up. Some units are claiming the intelligence designation is correct. Human Special Forces. The room grew quiet again. The High Commander's patience began to fade. Transmit the order again, he snapped. Seconds later, the command repeated across every coalition frequency. Advance immediately. Engage the human position. Down on the planet, coalition soldiers watched the distant cliffs where the human compound sat silently. No movement. No visible defenses. Just a quiet base surrounded by desert. A coalition armored division commander stared through his vehicle's targeting screen. His lieutenant stood beside him. Sir, are we actually doing this? The commander didn't answer at first. He zoomed the screen toward the cliffs. Nothing. But that made it worse. The lieutenant finally said what everyone was thinking. My brother fought humans on Talrex Station. The commander slowly looked at him. And he said the same thing. What thing? That the humans were outnumbered. The lieutenant swallowed. 200 to 1. The commander leaned back in his seat. What happened? The lieutenant replied quietly. Only 6 soldiers from his entire regiment came home. The armored commander stared at the compound again. 50 humans. Waiting. He opened the communications channel. This is Armored Division 7. The flagship immediately responded. Division 7. Advance on the human position. The commander took a breath. Then answered. No. Silence filled the radio. A moment later the High Commander's voice thundered across the channel. Division 7, repeat your response. The commander didn't hesitate. We are not attacking that compound. The High Commander roared back. You will obey the order. But across the battlefield, the same response began appearing everywhere. Infantry commanders delaying movement. Aircraft pilots refusing launch clearance. Tank crews shutting down their engines. A communications officer in the flagship war room looked up in shock. High Commander. Multiple divisions are refusing the order. The commander's fists tightened. Impossible. But the battlefield display showed the truth. 30,000 soldiers surrounded the valley, and not a single one of them was advancing. Then a final message appeared from one of the veteran coalition commanders on the surface. It was short, but it explained everything. If we attack those humans, none of us will leave this planet alive. The High Commander had reached the end of his patience. Inside the war room of the Dominion Spear, dozens of alien generals stood in tense silence as reports of refusal continued to pour in. Entire divisions had ignored the order. Pilots refused to launch. Armored units stalled their engines. Infantry commanders delayed their advance. The Coalition Army, one of the largest forces ever assembled in the galaxy, was refusing to attack 50 humans. The High Commander slammed both fists onto the command table. Enough! The holographic battlefield flickered violently from the impact. If these soldiers lack the courage to complete their mission, he growled, then we will use those who do. He turned toward a group of elite officers standing near the back of the chamber. Deploy the Iron Talon Battalion. A murmur spread through the room. The Iron Talons were the Coalition's most feared assault unit. 5,000 veteran soldiers. Shock troops trained for the most dangerous battles in the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions, broken planetary defenses. Even human regular armies had struggled against them. If anyone could destroy the outpost, it would be them. The order went out immediately. Within minutes, dropships began descending toward the desert valley. Down on the surface, Iron Talon transports roared across the sky before touching down across the surrounding ridges. 5,000 soldiers deployed quickly. Heavy armor vehicles rolled into position. Gunships hovered overhead. Every weapon pointed toward the quiet cliffs. Inside the compound, the humans did nothing. No movement. No warning shots. Just silence. The Iron Talon commander watched the base through his helmet display. "Advance," he ordered. Hundreds of soldiers began moving across the desert floor. Dust kicked up under their boots. Vehicles rolled forward slowly. The compound grew larger in their sights. Still nothing. One of the soldiers spoke nervously over the comm channel. "Sir, they're not even trying to defend themselves." The commander responded coldly. "Humans are arrogant." Then it happened. The ground exploded. A massive fireball erupted beneath the lead armored vehicle. The tank vanished instantly. Shockwaves ripped across the valley. Before anyone could react, more explosions followed. Hidden mines detonated in rapid succession. Entire sections of the battlefield erupted into chaos. Vehicles flipped. Soldiers were thrown through the air. The Iron Talon formation shattered within seconds. "Ambush!" someone shouted. Then the gunfire started. Sharp cracks echoed across the valley. Human sniper rifles. The shots were precise. Deadly. Every bullet found its target. Commanders fell first. Heavy weapon crews dropped next. Coalition soldiers scrambled for cover behind burning wreckage. But the humans were impossible to locate. Every time a sniper fired, the position was already empty before return fire arrived. "Where are they?" a soldier yelled. No one knew. Thermal sensors found nothing. Motion trackers showed only empty desert. But the shots kept coming. One by one. Perfect. Relentless. Within minutes, the Iron Talon Battalion, one of the most elite forces in the galaxy, was falling apart. Panic spread through the ranks. Because they were finally realizing something terrifying. The humans weren't defending the compound. They were controlling the entire battlefield. And the Iron Talons had just walked straight into it. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Smoke drifted across the desert valley as the surviving Iron Talon soldiers retreated in complete disorder. Burned vehicles littered the battlefield. Craters from hidden mines scarred the sand, and the cliffs around the human compound remained eerily silent. Inside the command flagship Dominion Spear, the Coalition war room was frozen in disbelief. The High Commander stared at the casualty display hovering above the table. The numbers updated slowly. Coalition casualties: 3,812. Iron Talon survivors retreating: 1,188. The commander's voice was low. And the humans? A communications officer hesitated before answering. Confirmed human casualties: 0. The room went completely silent. Dozens of generals stared at the numbers, trying to understand what they were seeing. 5,000 elite soldiers had attacked a small compound defended by 50 humans, and the humans had not lost a single soldier. The High Commander's claws tightened on the edge of the table. "Explain this." An intelligence officer stepped forward carefully. "High Commander, we may have misunderstood the situation." The commander glared at him. Misunderstood. The officer activated a larger battlefield scan. The hologram zoomed outward from the valley. Mountains. Desert ridges. Canyons stretching for kilometers in every direction. Then dozens of faint signals began appearing across the terrain. Hidden sensors. Buried explosives. Concealed firing positions. Underground tunnels. The entire region lit up with markers. The intelligence officer spoke quietly. The human compound was never meant to be defended. He pointed to the valley. It was meant to lure us here. Several commanders leaned closer to the display. Human special forces do not defend positions, the officer continued. They shape the battlefield. Another scan appeared. Thermal readings from the surrounding mountains. Movement patterns. Dozens of locations lighting up briefly. Those 50 soldiers have been operating across this entire region for days, the officer said. Setting traps. Placing mines. Establishing sniper positions. The High Commander stared at the hologram. They planned this. Yes. A new alert suddenly appeared on the display. Orbital sensors were detecting incoming ships. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The communications officer looked up in shock. High Commander, human fleet signatures detected. The hologram expanded to show the sky above the planet. Bright flashes appeared across the upper atmosphere. Human dropships entering orbit. Carriers arriving behind them. Entire battle formations forming in space. The intelligence officer slowly finished his explanation. You see, High Commander, human special forces have a very specific role in war. The commander looked at him. What role? The officer pointed once more at the valley. The quiet compound still sitting between the cliffs. Those soldiers were never trapped. He paused. They were the bait. The war room went silent again. Outside the flagship windows, the first human warships began appearing from hyperspace. Thousands of them. Then the officer delivered the final truth. Because when human special forces allow themselves to be seen, it means the rest of the human military is already on the way.